This is a reading from Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 23. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when evening was come, he was there alone. God is still speaking.
Day by day that voice still calls us, saying, Christian, follow me. As of old Saint Andrew heard it by the Galilean lake, turned from home and toil and kindred, leaving all for Jesus' sake. Jesus calls us from the worship of the treasures we adore, from each idol that would keep us, saying, Christian, love me more. In our joys and in our sorrows, days of toil and our unease, Jesus falls in cares and pleasures. Christian, love me more than these.
So I can't read this story without thinking about Wile E. Coyote when he runs out off of a cliff. He's fine until he realizes he's on air and he plummets to the earth. That's precisely what happens to Peter. He starts out focused, his eyes on Jesus, and he walks towards Christ's outstretched hand. It's not until he starts looking at the waves around him that he begins to sink. There's a short play by John Bell and Graham Mall published in This Is the Day, Daily Readings and Meditations from the Iona Community that I think really captures the feeling and the message of this text brilliantly. And I had to share it with you. And thanks to the wonders of technology, I didn't even have to hire a cast.
Is it as bad as that? Yes, but you've changed your clothes. You're dry now. It wasn't getting wet that bothered me, although, I mean, look at my hair. It was making a fool of myself. Why did you let me do it? Surely you knew what was going to happen. What have the others said? Well, they've been pretty good, apart from Andrew, who keeps making jokes about webbed feet. Well, your shoulders are broad enough. It's not my feet or my shoulders, Jesus. It's my head. Whatever made me try it? Well, you tell me, why did you try it? Well, you know what I'm like. I take these daft notions. I always want to be in on the action, and you make it look so easy. We all thought it was a ghost at first. I mean, treading on grapes is one thing, but walking on water is out of the question. Then we realized it wasn't a ghost, that it was you. You were walking on the sea. And you wanted to do the same, eh? Yes, I did. Why, Peter? A bit of me wanted to see if I could do it. And a bit of you wanted to show off? Yeah, that's right. But I did manage it at first, didn't I? Yes, you did. For about 5 yards. And then, after that, I don't remember a thing until I woke up in the boat with James pulling seaweed out of my mouth. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. You stopped looking at me and started looking at the waves. I could hardly do anything else. There was a giant swell. Remember Lot's wife, Peter. Did she try walking on water? No, but like you, instead of looking ahead, she began to get fascinated by the danger all around her, and she ended up being destroyed. I'm not sure what you're saying. Peter, I've asked you to follow me, and you can only follow me if you watch what I'm doing and see where I'm going. And wherever I am, there will be trouble and opposition. There will be threats all around you, and there will be distractions inside you, doubt, uncertainty, and all the old temptations that you thought you left behind. If you keep an eye on those things, you'll go under. If you keep your eye on me, you'll stay afloat. Is it as easy as that? No, Peter, it's not as easy as that. It's not easy at all. Do you ever feel like giving up on me, Jesus? Never. Anything else? Yes, it's high time you learn how to swim.
I love that take. I told you, you all are great at Zoom, but we all still make mistakes. I love the take in that play because it emphasizes a few things. First, it's clearly not a story about how with faith you can accomplish anything. This text has been misused so often to criticize or put guilt on people for momentary doubts. That was never, nor is it now, the message. Ooh, you know, I'm trying to make this work. All right, there we go. Doubts are common, and they're a part of what keeps us safe and what ultimately strengthens our faith. Because without doubts, our faith would never be sharpened or honed. The text is more about what the play describes, focusing on God and our work as God's hand and feet instead of all the waves and the danger around us. And that is exactly what we have done as a community in 2020. I know that all of you every year read the annual report cover to cover. It's about to come out. But in case you don't, I'm going to give you some highlights about things that people at our church have been doing because it bears repeating. I want to share some of the things that our church has accomplished in the midst of crisis, in the midst of this tumultuous sea created by the global pandemic and economic downturn, protests and riots, personal and national upheaval. So first, from the start, we made sure we were still caring for our neighbors and for God's creation, actually stepping up our efforts beyond what we were doing before COVID. For example, despite the complications related to COVID, we continued our highway cleanup program led by Joanna Fair. Joanna's family, along with the Gores and Rosemary Norwood and Lila Yepa, John Dickel, they made a socially distanced cleanup work. We continued our work with Family Promise, Casa Q, Project Share, East Central Ministries, and the East Mountain Food Pantry. Our members came up with creative ways to help out. We just had a conversation with John Minovich yesterday about ways to make sure that we're still participating in Project Share. When COVID-19 hit and other churches told Family Promise, which if you're not familiar is a traveling homeless shelter that stays in a different church every week. And churches, when COVID hit, said, we can't take the risk anymore. We can't have these families stay in the church. They asked us if we could host. Not just for 1 week, but for the duration of the pandemic. After putting together a safety plan with Erica, the council voted unanimously to let them stay. Since March, we've had 26 different people stay with us, about 10 at a time. That doesn't include the 20 people that we hosted earlier in the year, and several families have graduated. So they came here, they graduated, and now they're in their own homes. Folks like, I'm just gonna throw out a couple names. I can't get everybody, but Dew Williams, Gail Chinowitz, Dick Goins, so many of you donated supplies to Family Promise. I'm calling out Dick Goins because he just donated a train set that is so cool. You've donated baby supplies, and some of you have done laundry every week. Thanks to our choice to host Family Promise, we were also able to connect with other groups like Atrisco Heritage, where the teachers created a makeshift food pantry for their students. When we had more food donated to Family Promise than we needed, with Family Promise's help, we packed up care packages and gave them to Atrisco Heritage and their food pantry that didn't have many resources. The Rio Grande Food Pantry is also connected with us. Einstein Bagels is now donating bagels to our church. And when we have food left over, we give it back to other people in need, including some folks in our church who are in need right now. We also distribute extra food to Family Promise families who are now in their homes. So the relationship is continuing. You gave over $900 in grocery cards that have helped people in need buy food during this time. We also hosted a neighborhood LGBTQ Pride Walk that reached people around the world through social media. We're working on ourselves. Many of you are choosing to participate in protests and actions for racial justice across the city. Members of our contemporary theology class are studying white privilege and reading the book White Fragility to get a sense of our own issues around racism. And some members, including Dorinda, who are attending the anti-racism training that's all day Saturdays through August with the United Church of Christ. We also, if that wasn't enough, we also helped out to help our church community. I don't know if you remember, but not that long ago, it was hard to find toilet paper. Do you remember that? Toilet paper, hand sanitizer. Well, if you're a member of Church of the Good Shepherd, you could always get it here. We put together care packages for people who couldn't. First of all, people brought their extra. If they had extra toilet paper or hand sanitizer, they brought it to the church and we distributed it to members who either couldn't afford to buy sanitation supplies or didn't have access to it. The care team, led by Carol Jordan, regularly reached out with cards and calls to check on people. The care team's actually called, hopefully, every single one of you and checked in with how you are. I'm hoping we'll do more calls like that in the near future. Thanks to your generosity, we were able to help some members pay bills and not be evicted when they lost their jobs during this time. Some of you stepped up to be part of a COVID task force so that we could find a phased way that was safe to come back to worship. Mara Lee created an online business directory to highlight our church members' businesses. If you have a business and you're not yet in the business directory, put a note in the chat. I will make sure that Mara Lee finds out so that we can highlight you. Then there are all the people, these are all volunteers, by the way, all the people that stepped up for worship. We have David and Carol Red, who are doing hymns almost every week. And by the way, they're fine. They're just camping in Colorado, for those of you who wonder where they are. Don Barker, Dick Goins, Jim Garrison, Derek Gilmore, Jim Durfee, Susan McKenzie. All these volunteers worked with Linda and Lucian and Dorinda to record music for every Sunday. And Linda even figured out, with Lucian's help and a lot of our singers' help, I don't know if you know how hard it is to put together those pieces where there's a bunch of different windows of people. They're not all recording together at the same time. They record their pieces separately and try to layer their voices on top of each other. And while we cared for some of our members who lost jobs, we also saw extraordinary generosity from some of you who increased your pledges during this time. People also gave things like masks. Susan McKenzie made over 150 masks. And those have gone not only to our church members, but also to nursing homes, hospice care, different places that needed them. And she's not the only one. There's others of you who have given, there are other people who have donated masks. Overall, I think Erica said the count is over 250 masks have been donated to the church and given out to people in need. Nina Joy, in the midst of all of this, created a manual for the council on how to transition from one year to the next for the ministry team leads. She even did an online video to help teach people about our filing system. And then there are folks like Rondi Walker and John Minovich and Jill Crawley and Mike Lepola and so many other people who volunteered to give rides to doctor's appointments and do laundry for Family Promise and go shopping for people who are at high risk. Pat and Julia Gore put together well-produced videos for every week about our ministries. And we figured out Zoom. All of us did. There's not yet been a single interruption of the sermon. That's more than I could say for normal worship. But you all have learned new skills as well. And trust me, not all Zoom meetings go this smoothly. You're a big part of it. We also listen to members' needs, recognizing that now we're able to reach people who we weren't reaching before COVID. Right? It was great to have the service for Nancy Barfield and have Shirley Perio there. She wouldn't have been able to be there in person. How great that we figured out this technology. I've heard from some parents too, how nice it is not to have to wrestle with car seats to get to church in the morning. They can roll out of bed and let the kids run around and they can experience worship. Joanna Fair also created the online Zoom Sunday school, so our kids are still learning about God loving them and us loving them. We have dramatically expanded our ministry thanks to Marilee's help with YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. My progressive Christianity videos have now been seen by over 5 million people, if you can believe it. That's quite a reach. So we've connected with the wider church in new ways. We've also been able to do stuff with the wider church we didn't before, like attend ecclesiastical councils. Marilee helped us redesign our logo and get the word out about who we are on Facebook. And this list, I really could go on and on. Erica and I spent an hour the other day just talking about all the people who have volunteered. These are highlights, all right? There's a lot more that's happened. And it doesn't include all the work of the ministry team leads. So this is a plug when the annual report comes out this week to make sure you read it and see all the work that our ministries have done this year. The annual report, yeah, check it out. So in addition, like Jesus who went up the mountain to pray, we've also remembered how to take care of ourselves. With the support of Roberta Glazer on the memorial team, we found creative ways to honor Mark McConville and Nancy Barfield through online memorials. We got to celebrate the lives of people that we care deeply about. We've gathered for worship services, for social time, Sunday school. We're staying connected to God and one another. We even graduated 3 confirmation students, 2 of whom were baptized using a Rube Goldberg machine that allowed us to do it socially distanced. And those students spoke eloquently about how the forces of community and faith have impacted their lives. Alan Bash and John Midovich were a big part of making that happen and walking those young people through their journeys. Our women's retreat team has even put together weekly meditations. If you're on the midweek message, you should be getting those. Ways of keeping ourselves centered in the midst of troubling times, remaining present to God and one another. So these are just a small sampling of the hundreds of gifts that you have offered during this time. Whether there was something that needed fixing at the church, or someone who needed to be lifted up, or a need that wasn't being met, our church members were there to step up. The growth that we have experienced this year, not just in our reach to the community, but in the depth of our faith and our commitment to the work of God's love, our growth has been exponential. And we've done it in part because we're looking at Christ and not at all the waves around us. I am so encouraged and frankly overwhelmed by your generosity during this time and your courage in taking on tough issues and going above and beyond, and sometimes in heroic ways. We didn't have a choice in the circumstances of 2020. We were pushed off a cliff in many ways. And in the words of Valerie Russell, a lay person who preached a fantastic sermon years ago, we stepped off the cliff and we've been building our wings on the way down. And we are soaring. I know, I'm really curious now. Oh, Tanya's sending the information. Okay. I know it doesn't always feel like we're soaring. A lot of us are struggling emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. We feel stuck. We even feel like we're drowning sometimes. And some of us are feeling okay, but we don't feel like we're doing enough. And yet, the impact of our small pieces has been dramatic. I'm not only encouraged by the past, though, I'm encouraged about what lies ahead. Because I know that through this time, we've grown as a community in our courage to take risks. We've grown in our grace for one another and for ourselves. When those times happen, when we get tired or lose focus and we need someone to pick us up out of the water. Occasionally, and today is one of those days, it's good to take a moment out to pause and breathe and acknowledge that even if it's not all the time, like Peter, we are capable of walking on water. So my invitation to us this week is to celebrate, to give thanks to God, and to look back in awe and acknowledge that whatever small or large part we played, together we've accomplished something extraordinary. So when you're feeling down and you feel like you're on the boat exhausted, pulling seaweed out of your mouth like Peter, remember that it's because you've been trying to walk on water. And that even when you feel like that, Jesus is there to reach out a hand and lift you up. Amen. Let us pray.
We are featuring our worship ministry. This ministry represents COG's greatest commitment of time, energy, and resources in our budget.
Pastor Sarah, along with our worship ministry team, Linda Gilmore, our choir director, and Michelle Salt, our bell choir director, put together our outstanding Sunday morning services. The worship ministry team, in their handbook on the worship ministry, wrote, "Each week we come to Sunday morning service a little ragged around the edges, hungry for God's love. We worship together, sharing the knowledge that we are all part of the body of Christ, learning to love and be loved, heal relationships between God, oneself, and others, care for creation, and to do so in a community that is open to all." Before the COVID lockdown, there was always much going on, often behind the scenes and prior to Sunday morning, which created a smooth running service. How amazingly adaptable and creative have Pastor Sarah and Linda been during these times. Even though we are not meeting together in person, we are still experiencing the same outstanding sermons on Sunday, thoughtfully selected hymns, and uplifting music by our very talented instrumentalists and vocalists. Through the magic of video, we were able to participate in the baptism of 2 of our confirmants, pray with our sister church, and reconnect with distant former members and friends. If you wish to contribute to COGS, you can do so online at www.ucccogs.org or mail a check to the church. Thank you, church family, for supporting COGS.
Jesus brings a smile to my face. Jesus brings a smile to my face. When trouble's got me down and the world has a frown, Jesus brings a smile to my face. Now there was this blind man in Bethsaida was the place we was from. And he used to do panhandling on the corner of Comanche and the frontage road, right there across from Ishmael's Furniture Company. And that's where he made his living. That's what he did. And it was a dusty road. And one day, there was a commotion on the road, and he knew somebody was coming, and somebody said, "Jesus is coming." And he had somebody take him over there where Jesus was. And he said, "Jesus, I want to see it again." So Jesus picked up some dirt and he spit in it and he put it on the blind man's eyes, And he said, what do you see? The blind man said, well, I see trees walking around. Jesus said, oops, do-overs. And he picked up some more dirt and he spit it. And he put it on the blind man's eyes again. And the blind man saw. And Jesus brought a smile to his face. Jesus brought a smile to his face. Now troubles had him down, and his face had a frown. But Jesus brought a smile to his face. Now listen, there was three people, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. They ran a bed and breakfast in Bethany. And Jesus would come by there all the time. They were good friends. They were buds. And Martha, of course, was the practical one. And Mary was the dreamer. And Lazarus, we don't know what he did. He took care of all the maintenance, I guess. So one day after Jesus had left, Lazarus got deathly sick. And Martha sent a message to Jesus, a messenger, and said, you've got to come quickly. Lazarus is dying. He didn't come. And he didn't come. And he didn't come. Finally, he showed up. And she went out, she pointed her finger at him. She said, hey, if you'd have been here earlier, he would be alive. But he died 4 days ago just because you didn't get here. Jesus said, my bad, my bad. But he said, let's go to the tomb. So they went to the tomb. And they rolled that stone away. And Lazarus came walking out alive. And Martha, you look at her face because Jesus brought a smile to her face. Jesus brought a smile to her face. The troubles had her down and her face had a frown. But Jesus brought a smile to her face. Now one night, one evening really, there on the Sea of Galilee, it's also called the Lake of Tiberias, there were some men just standing around and they saw a boat and they said, hey, let's go fishing. Well, it was nighttime. I'm not a fisherman, but I've never, why would you go fishing at night? But they did. And they fished all night. Caught nothing. They got skunked. They got skunked. And then they heard this guy on the beach over there yelling and jumping and waving his hands. And he said, did you catch any fish? They said, no, we got nothing. We got skunked. He said, throw the net over on the right side of the boat. And they said, huh? Do what? Throw the net on the right side of the boat. The fish are all underneath it. Why would it make any difference? But they did it anyway. And they had so many fish they couldn't even pull the net into the boat. And they knew it was Jesus standing on the shore. And you know what? Jesus brought a smile to their face. Jesus brought a smile to their face. Troubles everywhere. And they didn't have a care. 'Cause Jesus brought a smile to their face.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who's that yonder dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the children that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children. God's gonna trouble the water. Who's that yonder dressed in blue? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the children, now let them through. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water.